And good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to another live Xanadu Gallery Art Business Academy online critique group session. Today is Wednesday, July 22nd, 2020. Good to be back here with all of you. Just a couple of items by way of quick business. First, for the last several weeks, I've been telling you you're going to need a passcode, a kind of code word to get into the sessions, and you noticed that you didn't need it today. Well, it turns out that Zoom has decided to give us a little bit more time without that added step. So you should be able to continue getting in the way you have been getting in. And then the other reminder is that for all of those of you who are attending these sessions or watching them on the recording page, that you are invited to go ahead and submit your artwork to be featured in the online critique group. There is a link on the broadcast page that will take you to a form that allows you to put in a submission for this. As I've mentioned in the past, I've kind of been reaching out previously to the Red Dot blog email list to get submissions. But those of you who are attending regularly, I'd love to have you submit as well so that we could feature your work. And so with that, let's jump into today's session and meet our featured artist today, Diane. And Diane, you're going to have to help me say your last name, Diane Lanau?
Luno.
Luno. I was not even close, but we'll take it. Diane.
We never do anything now.
There we go. Got it.
Luno.
Luno. Got it. Perfect. Well, welcome. And as typical in these sessions, I'd like to start just chatting a little bit about your background and how you came to be interested in and start creating artwork, and how you're creating the work that you're creating now. So take us back to the beginning.
Well, I think that the beginning was probably when I was born, because I've always been interested in some form of art, and I have had a hard time settling on one. So what I have settled on is a mixed media. I'm a mixed media artist. Basket weave, I paint, I've even done pottery, but I'm not a potter. And so now I'm working with gourds and collages and basket weaving. And after I got out of college, I did take some art classes in college. And after I got out of college, I opened a fine craft gallery in Houston, which kind of kept me in the front, and worked up to 3 galleries that I could keep all that they wanted of my art in their gallery. And then I moved suddenly to Wimberley 14 years ago, where I packed up everything, and I haven't touched that art in 14 years. So now I'm trying to get back in it. My galleries don't know who I am anymore. And I'm starting at the beginning, it seems. I'm producing, but I've been doing a few shows and sold a few pieces that way. But that's kind of where I am. I took off a lot of time to take care of family, mothers, and my mother and his mother, and my grandchildren. And now it's my time.
Time to get back in. Yeah,
I'm ready.
Absolutely. And so with that, let's jump into the work. And many of you had the opportunity to see the artwork on the review page. Let's get us up here and talk about, there we go. And Diane, maybe you can just, because, and let me pause actually before we do that. And I'll just say that as I was kind of going through submissions and looking at different work, I was very intrigued by Diane's work, and I found the form and the medium to be very interesting. And I thought this would be an interesting conversation for us to have. We're now 4 months into doing online critiques, and we've looked at a lot of painters, oil painters and acrylic painters and pastel, and we've looked at some sculptors. But what Diane is doing, what we're seeing here, kind of is outside of that. And I thought that would be a very interesting conversation for us to have. And I think it is a germane conversation for the art market, because I am seeing and have seen, I spend a lot of time traveling and visiting galleries and shows. And I've seen an increased willingness in the art market to branch out from, what I would consider to be kind of the traditional oil painting, bronze sculpture kind of medium. And you're going to start to see different art forms showing up in the marketplace. And we're going to look at some other examples of those. But Diane, talk about kind of where your inspiration is coming from for these pieces, and a little bit maybe about medium and process.
Okay, this piece is wire. It's all woven with wire to get the shape, and then wax linen to do the netting. And I laugh that you start with this one because this is like my claim to fame. I had entered it in a show in the Houston Contemporary Craft Gallery, and it got picked up to travel with the Smithsonian for a year. So it traveled around the United States, but I still haven't sold it. So I don't know, it's a strange piece, but the inspiration for me in all of my art is the material, I think. I pick up something and I start working with it, and also I pick it up and lay it down. I know a lot of artists just start and finish a piece, and I can't do that. So I might be working on 8 or 10 pieces at a time. And, I work a while and quit. This piece I just did start to fit to end. When you're doing basket weaving processes, it's monotonous. And I'm not a person who can do monotony very well. So I start and stop.
Yeah, well, I was going to say I would not have guessed that about you, because it seems like, and I won't use the word monotony. I'll let you use that word. But to me, it's the intricacy and the incredible, obviously, persistence and patience that you must have in creating these pieces. Let's look at a second piece.
Okay, this is one of my gourd pieces, and what inspired me on this piece was the beads that are on the top. They're apple coral, which is now against the law to collect the apple coral. And it's really hard to find now, but apple coral just inspired me to make little apple coral dots on it. And this was airbrushed. And I wove around the top with wax linen. This piece is pretty large, and I'd never made a wall piece before. And I was looking for something, I guess, to compete with painters. I wanted something to hang on the wall. And I really enjoyed making it. But there again, the process is I just start and work until I'm finished. I might be finished with a piece and put it up and then say, no, I'm not finished with that one.
And I think you're not alone in that regard. I often have to tell artists to get their work out of their studio. Once they think they're finished, get it out of the studio so they stop working on it.
Well, my art teacher, when I was 12, told me probably the main thing I learned from an art teacher, which was, if you're still working on a piece and you like it, quit. Or if you don't like it, keep working. So that's I have done a lot of these baskets, like sling, a lot of little small baskets. This piece isn't very big, and I just there again start. And here's one of my gourds. It's called Party Undercover, and it was done with airbrush and woven with wax linen again. And the top is reed. I put everything on the top, from deer horns to shoelaces. Just depends on what inspired me at the moment. I have a crazy closet, I call it, and it's a normal size closet, but it's full of little jars of odd stuff. And sometimes I'll get to where I'm ready to finish the top, and I just go look in that closet and say, this is what it needs, or that would look good on there.
Okay, good. So now we've looked at the 5 pieces that you had submitted. Looks like I might have a couple of comments, and I'd love to just start by getting reaction from those of you who are in the session to the work. So let me go first to Debbie. Debbie, can I unmute you here? There we go. Good morning, Debbie.
Good morning. I am fascinated with these pieces. I think the use of the different materials, the different shapes, the way you've combined so many different, like your eye just gets totally like drawn into it. I'm I can see why your piece was accepted into the Smithsonian. It's absolutely fascinating kind of materials that you've used and you've combined in there. So I just wanted to tell you how much I really am liking these.
Thank you. Thank you, Debbie.
Any other comments or questions about the work itself? And then we'll jump in and start talking a little bit about consistency and pricing, et cetera. Any initial reactions to the work that you'd like to share? And if not, oh, it looks like I've got Kate. Let me go to Kate and Marianne as well. Morning, Kate.
Okay, can you hear me?
Got you loud and clear.
Okay, one of the best things I like about your work is it doesn't say gourd. A lot of times when you go to fairs or shows, you can just tell where it began, and your work is nothing like that. And this piece almost looks like it has some mylar on it or something, but you have a really original use of materials here. I really like it.
Yeah.
I have to say, I've never seen a gourd that I thought wanted to be a duck or a Santa Claus.
Well, maybe that time will come, Diane. We'll wait for it.
Thank you for that comment.
Excellent. And Marianne, let me see if I can get you in. Good morning.
Morning. How is everyone? Diane, I just wanted to tell you, I think these are fabulous. I like the refined, primitive nature of them. I actually, just listening to you, I find you absolutely delightful. You're really very interesting and very cool. And I just think these are intriguing. And I'm very impressed with the piece that you said you wanted to just try to compete with 2D artists and have something to hang on the wall.
Let me go back to it.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I don't know, I really am impressed with it very much. And I'm thankful that you shared this with us. I think you're gonna push me to change some stuff in my own art. So
Hopefully,
this is successful. Thank you.
well, thank you very much.
Yeah, and I would echo that. And again, we've talked about this in previous critique sessions that the art market is a big place. There's room for all different kinds of work, and your self-expression, and there are collectors out there who are going to find whatever it is that you're doing very interesting. And along with that, I also love that we can go out in the marketplace into galleries or shows or artist studios, and from time to time just come across work that is completely unexpected and different and surprising, and something that we wouldn't have known to look for. And I think that's how I could describe Diane's work, is that would I have said to myself, I want to go out and find an artist who is using gourds in a very creative way, very contemporary, and unique use of materials, or creating very, it wouldn't even have crossed my mind, but when you see it, it really stops you, and kind of brings that sense of discovery. I found something that's very new and very different, and I would want to know more about the artist and want to know more about the work itself. Now, Diane, let me ask you this. As we look at your work, we see, of course, this is just a very limited sampling of the work. We're seeing 5 pieces here, and I would say each of the 5 has a fairly unique characteristic about it. Seems to have come from a unique place, and is somewhat different from each of the other 5 pieces that we've looked at. Talk about kind of the broader body of your work and what you're working towards. How much diversity is there? How much similarity is there between the different kinds of pieces that you are creating?
Well, that's actually something that I worry about, is because there's really no consistency in my pieces. My goal is to make each piece an individual piece. So that consistency in my work, I don't seem to pick it up.
So it's a great point. And those of you who have been attending these sessions know that that's exactly where the conversation is going next, is to talk about consistency. And Let's do that. And again, every once in a while, I like to just pull up my consistency criteria to kind of talk a little bit how I think about and maybe formally analyze the consistency of our work. And I'll just remind you that the criteria that I look at are subject matter, theme, the thematic elements of the work, style, palette, and medium, and then also I wouldn't put it quite as high on the importance, but I would also include presentation in these criteria. And remember, I'm not looking for artwork that is consistent across all 6 of these areas, that is 100% consistent in that way, because then you start to worry that you're maybe too homogenous or the work is too repetitive. But if I can have 3 or 4 of these elements very strong, then it allows some latitude in the other elements to have some variety in the work. And so as we look at Diane's work, let's talk about this. Is the work consistent? Can we make some arguments that tie these pieces together and create a consistent body of work? What are your thoughts? Give me some ideas about what you see that ties this work together. And I'm going to go ahead and lower everybody's hands so that you have to raise them again. Let's see here. But I would love to get your comments on what you see in terms of the consistency of the pieces that we're looking at. Let me go to Tim. Good morning, Tim. Oh, do I have you?
Can you hear me?
Yep, now I've got you, Tim.
Well, I know that the artist is worrying about that there's no consistency but if I were to walk into a gallery and I saw her name, a solo show, and saw all these pieces, I could relate to them as being from one artist. I'd love the diversity of them, but I see in them something that's all related. That's just my impression.
Yeah, and so Tim, I agree with that, and I feel similarly that if I saw this work together, I could feel like it was all done by one artist. But I have a little bit of a hard time putting my finger on exactly what it is. What is Diane's signature across all these pieces? Anyone have any ideas on what we're seeing here in terms of technique? Juanita, let me see if I can get you in.
Okay.
Gotcha.
I'm seeing that they're all vessels, and the weavings seem to provide a consistency for me. Also, I really see a sophistication in all of the work, and the level of craftsmanship is really high. It's very elegant.
Yeah, very interesting point. And so almost we could say that there is a consistency of technique, maybe, that it'd be hard to point to visually maybe what that element is, but like you say, the weavings and the intricacy of the work. I could argue that there is a kind of similarity in terms of the tone of the work. And again, that's not a very specific word, but there's a feeling of, here's someone who's really paying attention to these very interesting materials and using them in intricate ways to create these sculptural expressions. And so again, that kind of helps feel like the work has that consistency. But I'm still struggling. Anyone else want to jump in with some ideas? Let me go to Kate. Do I have you, Kate? Yes.
Okay. I think one of the things that ties things together for me are the really intricate sewing together of the reeds and materials, because that, like here on the almost looks like broomstick. So you see that waxed linen cord there, and you also see it in the wall piece. I think it's in just about every piece, and your materials all have a very natural feeling to them, and that weaving, sewn together, that really unifies it for me. And it's subtle; you don't see it. It's not a thing that pops out at you, but I find that it unifies it a lot, makes it very consistent.
Yeah, and so I think we're kind of chipping away at the edges there. That we can feel it, we can see it, we can see elements that tie it together. I would suggest, though, and Diane, it's something to consider trying, and that is, and I'm just going to show a couple of quick examples from Xanadu artists that I think it would be very interesting to see you expand in and do a few series where you're taking an idea and an expression in the materials, and you are creating maybe 3 or 4 or 5 pieces using all of those similar materials and the
Yeah.
similar design concept, and creating an expression of that in multiple pieces, kind of almost sets. So here are a couple of quick examples that I would show you of artists at Xanadu who have done that.
Okay.
This first artist is actually a new artist for us, and I hope you can, it's a little hard to see because of the size here, but here's an artist who's doing 3, ignore the frogs down on the floor and the horse on the pedestal. Those are a different artist. But all the pieces on the wall and then the larger pieces to the left, the floor standing pieces, are all done by the same artist. And what you can see is that we kind of have 3 groupings where we have the floor standing pieces. There's some weaving and ceramics involved. And then in the middle pieces, again, ceramics with different objects incorporated into them, and some variety in terms of the composition, but the idea is very similar, as is the format and presentation. And then on the right, she's doing some pieces with some wood and other materials. And so what happens is that even though we have a diversity of different ideas and concepts and materials that she's working in, by creating these small groupings, again, as I say, almost kind of sets of pieces, it creates a unique kind of engagement with the work that we see when collectors come in, where even though we've got a variety of different works, having them in little series helps to really create a kind of context and a narrative from one to the other, and again makes them very identifiable. Another maybe more extreme example of this, and I'm only going to be showing one series here. The artist who does the pieces on the back wall will do various series using a similar technique, but right now what we're showing of hers is a series of these aspen pieces that have different textures and have writing incorporated into them. And so again, having that series, it just creates a very strong impact. And I wonder, Diane, if you couldn't similarly kind of look at your work in that same way, and instead of thinking, well, I'm going to create one of this particular weave and basket and then move on to something else, to be thinking in terms of, well, could I take the same materials and create 4 or 5 of them and thereby have a series? And then knowing that as I'm finishing that, or maybe even at the same time I'm working on it, I've got another series of 3 or 4 pieces that are coming together and I'm using the same techniques and process. The other advantage to that is that, in some ways, I suspect, Diane, with each of those pieces that we saw, you were exploring and discovering new techniques in creating the work and going through somewhat of a learning curve to get it to work the way you wanted it to work. And by working in a series, you get to take advantage of having gone through that learning curve to produce multiple pieces that could be very strong and stand together.
Yeah.
And then the last element I would say is that we often see, especially, let me go back. I keep pushing the wrong button here. If we go back, this artist in particular, when she's working in series, what we find a lot of times is that our collectors, when they come in and are intrigued by the work and learn a little bit about it, instead of buying one piece, they end up buying 3 or 4 or 5 to make a series in their own home and have a powerful display of the work. So I'd love to hear your reaction to that, Diane, and what that thought process sparks.
Well, I in fact did not even realize it, but I have done a couple of series. I mean, I just didn't put them all together thinking about them as a series. I tended to think of them more as similar things in different colors or different materials. But yes, I can see that the consistency could be there that way. And I also could see the advantage of maybe someone who liked one buying more. and displaying them together as a group. I've never really, even the group that I've made, I haven't displayed it as a group. So maybe I could do that.
Yeah, and I think what you would find in experimenting with that and trying that is that then as you're thinking about going out and showing the work to galleries and looking for representation, and maybe putting together a portfolio of the work, that portfolio then will it'll still be diverse and still have a variety of different kinds of work. But as you're able to group them together, it creates that very pleasing kind of narrative where I get the sense that the artist is telling me a story, if you will, through the different work that's being manifest here, rather than it just being an interesting mix of a lot of different kinds of work. I get to see a variety of work, but still have a sense that there is a kind of systematic approach to creating that work and creating what's interesting. And I would also say that in my experience, both with the collectors in my gallery and myself, that there is some real power to repetition, to creating harmonies through repetition. And that by seeing two examples of a piece, I can maybe appreciate more of what's going on because I'm able to then contrast them and say to myself, oh, I really like what's going on in this first piece, but seeing the second one tells me why I like what's going on in this first piece and what I like about it.
Right.
And so giving yourself the opportunity to do that, I think could be very powerful with your work.
Yeah, thank you. I could do that.
Any other thoughts? Anyone else want to jump in with some additional comments on, and I guess I better lower hands again, additional comments or questions about consistency or struggles that you've had with consistency and found ways through? Love to get community feedback on that. Or not. Okay, let's move. Let's talk about pricing then. And I did get some comments. Oh, hold on. I actually do have, I think it's Renata. Let me see if I can get you in. Do I have you? Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Wonderful. I just wanted to add, for me, this is all about, it's almost indigenous-like, using natural materials and talking about cultivating it. It's sort of civilization and nature put together as a theme. And then the natural materials, it's almost anti-technology, pro-feminism. You know, all of those things are sort of related when I see these pieces.
Yes, that's very interesting. And Diane, talk about that. I mean, how important, and this is kind of a stupid question because obviously it's very important, but how important are those materials and finding the materials and bringing them together and that they're natural?
Well, first of all, I don't think there's any stupid questions. I don't think it's important to me to stay in the natural. A lot of my collages, and in this group I did send all basket weaving and gourds, but a lot of my collages, I use everything. And I can see now, even in my collages, I have no consistency. And to put a group together, a grouping would be very good to that. But it's, to me, relaxing to work with the natural materials because you have to collect them and process them. And you work with water a lot, and I like that. You know, you've heard of underwater basket weaving, that I kind of like that. And so the nature of the natural things really appeal to me in all my life, everywhere, not just in my art. So
yeah, and certainly with these pieces that you've shown us, it would be a natural theme. You know, and if I were putting together a show of these pieces, that would certainly be something that I would want to be talking about and emphasizing, and as people were experiencing the work, explaining the materials that are going into them. Which leads us right into the conversation about pricing. And let me get up there. And once again, I'll get to some of your comments. It seems to be a common theme that we see across all of the work that we review here is that we echo the refrain, you're not charging enough. It doesn't seem like the prices are high enough. And certainly as we look at these examples, 175, 375, 1200, it feels like if I'm comparing the amount of work that I imagine must have gone into these pieces, to me that value seems low, and that there would be room for increase there. So talk about, Diane, how have you approached this process of pricing the work?
Well, when I finish a piece, I put it in a spare room, because this piece right here, that piece would probably have been 12,000 when I put it in the room. And then when I take it out, I kind of forget all of the hard work. And so I look at it more of what might make it sell.
Yes, and so this is the challenge, right? And I love the way you put that. If certainly if you're right in the midst of the struggle and all of the work that's going into it, you gain an appreciation for the incredible value of it. And then once you're able to step back and be more objective about it, you maybe look at it a little differently. But to me, what it seems like is that you might have left it in that room a little too long. That you've put a little bit too much space between yourself and what went into it, and even more than that. And as I've suggested previously in these sessions, that rather than focus on your subjective experience in creating the work and the work that went into it, and that can vary pretty dramatically from piece to piece. As much as possible, I prefer to have an artist kind of step back and look at the marketplace as a whole. What are our other artists who are doing work that is similar to mine, weaving or gourds, or other object-oriented art? How are they pricing and selling their work? What does the marketplace seem to, how does it seem to be responding to the work? And doing that, I suspect if we were to go out and look at, and as I have visited galleries that are showcasing work like yours, I suspect we'd find that the price points were a bit higher, and in some cases pretty significantly higher than what you're charging. And we want to be competitive with that, especially as you're going out to talk to galleries. I think that, if you were to present a portfolio of these works at these prices, the response you would get be, wow, these are beautiful. They're amazingly executed. They're gorgeous. We can't afford to sell them at the prices at which you have them listed right now. Once we start thinking about the commission for the gallery, once we start thinking about the display space where we're showing them, we need them to be valued higher in order to make it worth the effort. And then one other comment is that I think it's often a mistake all of us make when we think, well, I want these to move and sell, so I want them to be very aggressively, competitively priced. What I actually find is that, and I've seen it time and again, where an artist will say, I raised my prices and my sales increased significantly, because now the viewer has a real sense of the value of the work. And I think that's an important distinction for us to think about: value versus price. And the more we value the work, the more our collectors are going to value it. So I would suggest, especially that first piece, I look at this piece and its provenance. It's been in a show with the Smithsonian. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if after we hang up this call, you get a slew of emails from attendees saying, I would love to buy that piece at $175 because that's a steal. I think that, again, if we were to put it out into a gallery, we'd want it to have a much more significant price point on it.
Okay, good.
Anyone else want to jump in with comments or questions on pricing? Okay, let's go to some comments. Let me get to them. Edna has a comment on pricing that fits right along with this and kind of echoes what I was saying. Edna says, I think that your work is beautiful and would easily find a market if you want to show in commercial galleries. I'm pretty sure you need to raise your prices, considering a gallery will probably take 50% of your marked price for their commission. So yeah, that's an echo of exactly what I was saying, is that we need to build it in so that it's profitable for both you and the gallery. And again, so the collector feels like they are attaining something of great value. We don't really have a lot to talk about in terms of presentation because we've been looking at the presentation. So let's go to some of the comments. Carla says, and this was a comment that was kind of echoed through the submissions I got ahead of time. That is, she says, I love Diane's baskets. The first thing that popped out at me was their uniqueness and originality. They aren't like anything else that I've seen before with basket weaving or gourd art. And that is your strength right there, Diane, is that you're creating something that is at the same time recognizable. I've seen basket weaving before, I've seen gourd art before, but is very unique and different. And so it's, as I say, delightful and unique at the same time as being somewhat recognizable. Linda says, I find the work interesting, craftsmanship very strong. I like the unexpected elements of many of the pieces. These are very reminiscent to Native American artistry. So I'm very curious what the background is of the artist. If she's not Native American, what is her relationship? Talk about that, Diane. Do you draw influence or inspiration?
I'm just plain old Dutch.
Good old Dutch.
And I have studied basketry, which brings in a lot of Native American basketry, but I really don't see, for me, any connection to Native American. When I first started working in gourds, I did some Native American looking pieces, and someone said to me one day that if I wasn't Native American, I shouldn't be making them. And I thought, that's a good point. So I quit making those and started doing other things, which pleased me more. And that person also. So I really don't have any Native American ancestry.
Yeah, and it's an interesting question, and certainly a little bit of a delicate topic in the art world. This idea of cultural appropriation and what's appropriate and what's inappropriate. I come down on the side of feeling that we are all a part of a shared culture and a common history. And that certainly an artist is going to be more successful if they are doing something that is uniquely theirs. But I also think that it's a little bit ridiculous to think that we're not all going to be influenced by
Oh, yeah.
the underlying culture that surrounds all of us. And certainly if you're working in a medium that was pioneered by and cultivated by a native peoples, there's just no way you're going to escape those comparisons and tie-ins, and that you would be foolish not to learn from the techniques that were first created by and cultivated by, but at the same time, you want to try and create your own look with the work.
Well, one of the major types of basket weaving is knotless netting, which fishermen use to make their nets. And so that's what I use. I use that a lot. But one of the problems I have is people who come into the gallery and look at my work and like it and they're ready to buy it. And then they find out that it's not ceramics, that it's a gourd, and then they don't want it.
Oh,
I've had that
interesting.
happen at 2 shows. And it's like, okay, that's kind of narrow-minded, but
Yeah. Yes, and I think that, and I understand that that challenge. Certainly, we similarly have had instances where artwork has confused viewers. They were expecting one thing and it ended up being another.
Mhm.
And I look at that as an opportunity for education. And what I would want to be doing is in your artist statement, and certainly for your galleries who are talking to collectors, kind of have educated them, or when you're talking to collectors, what you'd want to do is talk about the reason, well, here's why I used a gourd and not ceramic. And here are the differences. Here are the effects that working with a gourd allows me to achieve that I could not achieve in any other way. And it may take some, some serious contemplation on your part to be able to articulate why it is that you're creating the pieces that you're creating in the way that you are. But by doing that and by really looking at it as an opportunity to educate, we find that visitors to the gallery, they may not have come into the gallery looking for an education, but when they have the opportunity to gain one, and when their horizons are opened up, and when they buy into it, that's obviously not going to happen with everyone who has the opportunity to get that education. But when they do, they will then become your biggest fans.
Yeah.
As they understand why it's different, why you're doing what you're doing, they will become your advocates and your collectors, and they'll end up with multiple pieces over the course of years because they now feel like they have an inside track. And if we can invite collectors into that inside track, it is a very powerful effect that occurs.
That'd be great.
We are quickly running out of time. I would love to get any of you who have some last thoughts or comments, and I didn't get to everyone's comments that submitted them ahead of time, but any last words of wisdom or encouragement for Diane that you'd like to throw out there? If you want to raise a hand or unmute yourself and hop in, I'd love to take your last words. We'll give it a second
I
here.
would like to know if anybody, I live in a little tiny town in Texas, and there's a couple of nice galleries here, but I'd like to know how you handle a gallery that's some distance. Like, how would I deal with a gallery that's far away?
Great question. And obviously there are a lot of artists who are attending or will be watching this who are in a similar situation where you're not in an art mecca. There aren't a bunch of galleries around, or aren't the kinds of galleries that you'd hope to be showing in. And it's a question that we could probably spend an hour talking about, but just the brief answer is that certainly you can expand your reach with your art through a couple of simple methods. One is if you have an opportunity to travel and visit some art markets and visit some galleries in those markets and show them your portfolio, or you can email those galleries with the portfolio to show them your work. But once you find a gallery that's interested in your work, and it's not a local gallery, basically, it really doesn't matter how far away they are, because working through the logistics of getting artwork packed up and shipped to a gallery, once you're figuring out that process and getting through that learning curve, it doesn't matter if the gallery is 300 miles away or 3,000 miles away. It's the same process. So certainly there is a bit of a learning curve there, but you can either find a local shipper who will work with you to find a good way to safely pack and ship the artwork, or you can develop your own packing and shipping process. And I work with many artists who are working, and in fact, those ceramic pieces that I showed you, that artist is from the East Coast.
Yeah.
And ships those works across the country to me all the time, and just over time.
I don't have so much trouble with the packing and shipping and unpacking and shipping. It's the how to find the gallery to start with.
Yes, good. So that would be a multiple hour conversation to have.
Okay.
By sheer coincidence, I just have to mention that this Saturday morning, 7 a.m. Pacific time, I'm giving a 3-hour workshop online that's exactly what I'm going to be talking about. How to search out and find the right galleries, how to build relationships with them, how to prepare to do that. But what I would say, Diane, is it's very doable. There are many artists here today and many artists that I work with who, again, once you get through that learning curve, and once you figure out how to get into one gallery, you can take that same process and reach out to a variety of galleries to show your work. And then it's just a matter of balancing your production against the sales that are occurring in those galleries.
And given that I have several different things that I do, should I expect that to be different kinds of galleries?
Most likely.
Probably.
Again, we talked about consistency, and my way of thinking about this is if I could show all of the work in a portfolio and it would make some kind of logical sense, if I can make a story work across all these pieces and tie them together, then yes, I could show them to the same galleries. But if it's really difficult, You know, as you say, if I'm doing some collage work that feels much more cutting edge and contemporary, and then these pieces that are more natural, they're probably going to appeal to a different audience and would show to different galleries. And I'm afraid we have run out of time. But Diane, I really want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to see your work and talk about your background and your pieces. I again appreciate everyone who's willing to come and sit in the hot seat and give us the opportunity to have a conversation and learn some new things and think about new things. My hope is that even though your work might be very different from the other artists who are being featured or who are attending here, that seeing their work can spark ideas and can give you ideas that will be valuable to you in your own creative practice and creative business. So again, thank you, Diane.
Well, thank you for having me, and you have answered some questions.
Excellent. Well, it's been a pleasure, and thanks to everyone. We will be back here, same time, same place, next Wednesday. So stay tuned for the invitation on that. We'll look forward to seeing you soon. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.